Good evening. Okay then, let's start today's class. In the last class, what we were discussing was we were talking about pteridophytes, right? And we have talked about the last. We were talking about classification of pteridophytes, right? And while discussing the points about each and every class of pteridophytes, we were talking about something called as Scaly, right? So, aji class 2, we'll be talking about concept of Scaly. I think you all have already got the PDF, right? And did you go through the pages? Content to common position?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes or no? What about the rest of the students? Did you all go through the content?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes? The
Yes,
voice is
ma'am.
not clear. Okay. So we are going to start with Scaly. Now the point is why we have to talk about Scaly in case of pteridophytes, because Scaly structure has started developing only in this group of plants that is called as the pteridophytes. Scalar structure maniki, we are basically concerned with that area where the vascular bundles are present. Vascular bundles will keneke form whole code thake, right? Specifically about vascular bundles, we need to talk in pteridophytes because we know pteridophytes are the first land plants. Our land plants vascular tissues. No doubt vascular tissues are not well developed, but in spite of that, vascular bundles dekhai pam. So we'll be talking about that area where you will see the vascular bundle. So it is silly before going into the notes that you have already got it, no? Eta bostu sabasan. Before going into silly, no? Silly definition to ki likha ase. Silly is the whole it's WHOLE. Silly is the whole central mass of vascular tissues with or without pit surrounded by the endodermis. So silly ki hoy? It's the whole central mass of vascular tissues. Now what you understand by the central mass of vascular tissues? To understand that, suppose we are talking about এটা যদি ডাইকট স্টেমৰ আমি TS কাটো তেতিয়াহলে what we are going to see certain cells or tissues, right? এইখিনিটো আমি জানো. Suppose we are talking about this as stem, we are going to cut a TS. This is something that we have already discussed. So you are going to see something like this, right? So এইটো বস্তু ইয়াত যেতিয়া আমি TS কাটি পেলাই চাও তেতিয়া আমি কি দেখা পাও? We see certain types of tissues that are arranged in a proper manner, right? So either we are talking about stem or we are talking about certain type of roots, right? So etia ami to explain, we are taking the example of a dicot stem. So dicot stem or TS katu etia ami kishuman tissues or arrangement dekha pao. Tissues bilak keneke arrange hoi thake? এই বস্তুটো আগতেও কৈছো epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle, right? So etu jodi epidermis hoy, epidermis inner round of cells would be cortex. Cortex or inner side e ki rakhibo? Endodermis. Endodermis or inner to endodermis would be present what is called as this pericycle, right? Now all the tissues that are inner to pericycle, right? Jimanpur tissues inner to pericycle ase, this is what is called as stele. And when we are talking about a dicot stem, ami stele ki koisu je it is the whole central mass of vascular tissues. So এই stellar tissues bilakor by এইখিনিতে কি থাকিব? Vascular tissues, so vascular bundles bilak থাকিব, right? So this is something that we understand. So stele, this is the area within the tissues ami ki dekha pam? Vascular bundles will dekha pam. Now in case of a dicot stem, এনেকুৱা স্ট্ৰাকচাৰ আমি ক'ত দেখা পাম এনেকুৱা স্ট্ৰাকচাৰ আমি টেৰিডোফাইটছতো দেখা পাম জিমনোস্পাৰ্মছতো দেখা পাম আৰু ইন কেছ অফ এন্ডোস্পাৰ্মছও দেখা পাম বাট ইফ ইউ আৰ টকিং অবাউট দ্য ডাইকট স্টেম বা ডাইকট root যদি কওঁ so in case of dicot stem this central mass central বুলি ক'লে we are concerned with this right? central massত no doubt vascular bundle বিলাকটো থাকিবই তাৰ উপৰিও a mass of parenchymatous tissues থাকিব and this mass of parenchymatous tissues is called as peat. What is peat? The peat is a collection of parenchymatous tissues that is present exactly at the centermost portion, right? Especially iman distinct peat in case of higher plants, right? Angiosperms to dekhai pam. Obviously, in case of gymnosperms to peat dekha pam and peat originally a ciliar structure to peat nasile gradually jetia ciliar structure develop korise ei peat to ami gradually dekha pao কিন্তু if you are talking about that starting point of the ciliar structure no cili to keneke develop kore so ami jano within the pericycle tak ami cili boli kau at the very beginning the peat was absent and as a result that cili that did not have a peat was considered as a solid cili. I mean, kataman words below, then we'll go to the information that is given in the PDF. Aji class of ki buzi, we are talking about the concept of cili. What is cili? The central mass of vascular tissues is called as cili. This central mass may be with pith or it may be without a pith. Is the point clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Everyone? Okay. Another point before starting, when we are talking about peat, Petra information likhil basun, tarpor ami details or jam. Jihetu we'll keep on talking about peat. So what is the peat? Common information ta likhil ba. Peat is also called as medulla. Junbilak চিলিত বা যোনবিলাক প্লান্টছত আমি পিট দেখা পাম তাত আমি কি বুলি কম মেডিউলেটেড ওয়ার্ডটো ইউজ কৰিম আৰু যদি পিট নাথাকে তেতিয়া হলে আমি নন মেডিউলেটেড চিলি ওয়ার্ডটো ইউজ কৰিম ইজ দ্য পইণ্ট ক্লিয়াৰ peat present peat is also called as medulla so jot peat thakibo that will be a medullated tissue jodi peat na thake tetia hole tat ki boli kobo ami non medullated that's the first point second point is if peat is present especially in case of angiosperms the TX cutting ami peat or proper peat heta dekha pa what is the position of the peat it always occupies the centermost portion clear soft region comprised of parenchyma cells found not just in the central portion of the stem but also in the roots of certain plants. So, found ক'ত হয় কিহেৰে বনোৱা আছে সেইখিনি আমি চাব লাগিব as far as the function is concerned the function is to transport the nutrients and also store nutrients in their লিখিলো এইটো So what is pith or medulla? Pith or medulla is a soft region generally found in the centermost portion, more commonly found in stem, but in roots also, in certain types of roots we can find that. It is made up of what? It is made up of parenchyma tissues. What is the function? Transport of nutrients. What is the position? Obviously we have discussed, this is the central position. Here,
Ma'am,
এইখিনি ক্লিয়াৰ হৈছে নে কিবা ডাউটছ আছে?
ma'am, পিঠটো আমি মেম টেৰিডোফাইটত দেখা নাপাম নেকি মেম?
টেৰিডোফাইটছতো দেখা পাম। যেতিয়া টেৰিডোফাইটছত স্টিলাৰ ষ্ট্ৰাকচাৰ আৰম্ভহে হ'ব ন, সো একদম ইনিশিয়েল একদম ফাৰ্ষ্ট ষ্টেজত আমি পিঠটো দেখা নাপাম। গ্ৰেজুৱেলি ইন দ্য প্ৰচেছ অফ ইভলিউশ্যন আমি পিঠ দেখা পাম। সো আজি যেতিয়া আমি ডিছকাছ কৰিম তেতিয়া আমি কিছুমান টেৰিডোফাইটছৰ কথা কম কি পিঠ প্ৰেজেন্ট। ওকে, সো পিঠ started from pteridophytes, continued till angiosperms.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, next is as far as peach is concerned, no, peach or basic details ami plant anatomy korim, right? So eta to ami plant kingdom kori asu, plant anatomy jeta korim, then we will be talking in details. Tat ami akko poribo lagibo je peach clearly ami code dekha pao. One hint to remember is it's always in monocot root, dicot stem. তাতহে আমি পিচ দেখা পাও, right? ক'ত দেখা পাও? Monocot root আর dicot stem. So Mr. DS, this is one way to remember. So anatomy questions ahe. Peach is present in monocot root ne monocot stem. It is present in monocot root. Dicot stem ne dicot root. Dicot is present in dicot stem. So this is one way of remembering. কিন্তু এখানে আমি anatomy করিম. As of now, I think the concept of peach is clear. খালি মনত ৰাখিবা ক'ত দেখা পাম? Center portionত. Now we come to the main discussion. So what is stele? It is the whole central mass of vascular tissues surrounded by the endodermis. অলপ আগতে আমি কি কলো যে আমি কি সিকোয়েন্স অফ টিস্যুজ বিলাক দেখা পাম টিএস কৰিলে ইসি ইপি সিকোয়েন্স, রাইট? এটু যদি পেরিসাইকেল হয়, পেরিসাইকেলৰ আগৰ লেয়াৰটো এটু যদি পেরিসাইকেল হয় এটু কি হ'ব? এন্ডোডার্মিস। তা আগৰ লেয়াৰটো হ'ব কর্টেক্স, তা আগৰ লেয়াৰটো হ'ব এপিডার্মিস, রাইট? সো কি কৈছে যে পিঠখিনি এইখিনি সারাউন্ডেড বাই কি? Surrounded by the endodermis. So question যদি আহে, what is the boundary of a peach? The boundary of a peach is nothing but the endodermis. If endodermis is the boundary of a peach, what about pericycle? Pericycle is a part of a peach. Clear? The endodermis is not a part of a peach. Okay, next point is, first to definition whole, question ahe, who have given the concept of stele. So when Tiagham and Dollard Jundra Nama said, underline it's important. According to them, the stele is the central part of the axis of the plant of the vascular structures. Etia stele logot duta word use korisu soason. Stele ki ho we understood. Stele kiman types buli koise? Stele types nohoy duta word use korisu, that is intrastellar aru extrastellar, right? So intrastellar tissues aru extrastellar tissues মানে কি বস্তু? কোনখিনি টিস্যুক আমি intrastellar কৈছো আৰু কোনখিনিক আমি extrastellar কৈছো? Look into the definition. The tissues within or inside the stele. তাৰমানে again if you are talking about this as the cili, right? এই ইয়াৰ ভিতৰত যিমানবোৰ থাকিব তাক আমি কি বুলি কম? Intra. Cili. So within the cili is intra, and all above that lies outside the cili. Cili to the centermost portion. তাৰ ওপৰতো থাকিব layers বিলাক কি থাকিব? Endodermis, then cortex, then epidermis. So এইবিলাক কি হয়? Extracellular tissues today together with the pericycle. তাহাঁতক আমি কি বুলি কৈছো? Intracellular. Are the two words clear?
Ma'am, camera to blur হৈ গৈছে.
Ma'am, screen to blur হৈছে.
Screen blur হৈ গৈছে. এটা ঠিক হল নে নাই?
ঠিক আছে ma'am.
Okay, voice to go asile ne?
Ma'am, voice গৈছিলে.
Okay. So we are talking about intracellular tissues and extracellular tissues. Intracellular tissues ki the cili with the pericycle tak ami ki boli kom intracellular. Endodermis onwards tak ami ki boli kom extracellular tissues. Clear? Next, the next point tells us about the endodermis. Ki likha ase so endodermis surrounds the cili but not a part of cili. A point to report question ahe. Endodermis ki hoy? The cili remains surrounded by the endodermis, but endodermis is not a part of a cili. Then endodermis is a part of cortex. So a cortex actually part of cortex boli kihor karone koise? We are drawing here, what we are showing is distinct layers, right? Epidermis individual, cortex individual, endodermis individual. I mean individually akiso, but the line that says is endodermis is a part of cortex. The reason behind that is if you are looking into the tissues or if you are looking into the transverse section, no, tar bhitor epidermis is single layered, with certain exceptions obviously, right? Next is endodermis is also single layered. If you are talking about the cortex is multi-layered. So in the whole CS, no, upor extracellular tissues ami cortical region to sobotse beshi dangor ke dekha pam, and that is one reason why endodermis is said to be a part of the cortex, right? And it is not a part of the cili. Is the point clear?
Ma'am, এইটো point আপুনি আৰু এবাৰ কৈ দিব পাৰিব নেকি?
Ha, which one? Which one?
So, ma'am, এইটো endodermis part 2.
Endodermis, no? Endodermis is, just remember, endodermis is not a part of the cili. It is a part of the cortex, right? Why is it called as a part of the cortex? Because in a TS, suppose a dicot stem or a TS, if you draw or if you see, maximum tissues, no? Epidermis, single layered, endodermis, single layered. Majot ki ase? So epidermis or majot ki regibo? Cortex or piece or next layer ki endodermis. So if you are talking about tissues like this, no? Tahate NAK arrange ho thake. Etu jodi epidermis, then you have these layers as cortical cells or the cortex, and then you have something like this, a single layered structure that is called as endodermis. So endodermis ki hoy single layered, epidermis ki hoy single layered, cortex multi-layered, no? Maximum tissues, cortical regions are there, and that is another reason why it is said that endodermis is a part of the cortex and not the pericycle. Tamane, so endodermis khonor inner to endodermis ami ki dekha pam? Obviously pericycle dekha pam, kintu pericycle is a part of the cili. So what we can say is below the or inner to the endodermis ami jimanbo tissues dekha pam, tak ami ki boli kom? Cili. Eta this layer কি কনসিডার কৰিবা? চিলিৰ পার্ট বুলি কনসিডার কৰিম নে কর্টেক্সৰ পার্ট বুলি কনসিডার কৰিম? Endodermis is always considered as a part of the cortex. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, welcome. Now we'll talk about the different types of cilia, right? So talking about evolution, plants or evolution of kotha kowa loge loge, if we start from the primitive group that is algae, in algae vascular tissues were absent, so obviously cilia was absent. In case of bryophytes also vascular tissues was absent, non-vascular plants asil no tahat, so cilia was absent. But in case of pteridophytes, vascular system or vascular tissues started developing, so cilia also started evolving, or evolution of cilia took place. When we are talking about evolution of cilia, we have to talk about primitive cilia and advanced cilia. এতিয়া চাবলৈ গলে cilia structure ক'ত develop কৰিছে, pteridophytes develop কৰিছে, so সবতছে primitive type of cilia আমি ক'ত দেখা পাম, pteridophytes, yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, if we are talking about primitive and advanced, primitive cilia is found in pteridophytes. The next question is advanced cilia, or the most advanced cilia আমি কোনটো গ্রুপত দেখা পাম?
Gymnosperms.
No, it is the most advanced group, that is angiosperms. Is the point clear? Primitive
ma'am.
cilia in pteridophytes, most advanced in angiosperms. Again, from the angiosperm section, angiosperms divide into two groups, monocots or dicots. So, advanced কোনটো?
Monocot.
Monocot. তেতিয়া হলে সবতছে advanced cilia আমি ক'ত দেখা পাম?
Monocots.
Monocots.
Monocots. Is the point clear? So stellar
Yes, ma'am.
structures started developing in pteridophytes. সবতছে primitive cilia ক'ত দেখা পাম? Pteridophytes ত, আৰু সবতছে advanced cilia আমি ক'ত দেখা পাম? In case of monocots. And as we talk about this evolution of cilia, we will see different names and different types of cilia. একদম primitive cilia টোক এটা নাম দিছে, সবতছে বেছি advanced cilia টোক এটা বেলেগ নাম দিছে. So accordingly we have types of cilia. We will start discussing with the most primitive type of cilia. When the stellar structure started developing in plants, that stellar structure, stellar mane ki? We are talking about the centermost portion of the plant, right? Either it's a stem or it is a root. We are talking about the centermost portion. Covered by ki? But surrounded by ki? Surrounded by the endodermis. Endodermis of our ki thakibo, pericycle, and collection of tissues thakibo. Endodermis thakibo. Endodermis of our pericycle thakibo. Pericycle of এইবিলাকত কি থাকিব? Tissues. যেতিয়া stellar structure develop কৰিলে, তেতিয়া that first type of cilia is called as কি? Solid cilia, or the name was Protozoa. So আমি কি পঢ়ি আছো? Evolution of cilia. Most primitive cilia কি হয়? It is Protozoa. It is also called as a solid cilia. Why is it called as a solid cilia? Because centermost portion on peat is absent. Is the point clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay. Peat started developing during the evolution of cilia. So obviously primitive cilia peat nasile. So the first one is Protozoa. Protozoa key points likhise so on the basis of evolution, the first cilia is Protozoa, that is also called as monocoty. It is also called as monocoty, or it is also called as solid cilia. What is the most important point over here is peat. Since peat is also called as medulla, so a cilia
non-medullated.
very good. I think these two terms are clear now. Peat যদি absent, সেই cilia টোক solid কম, আর peat যেহেতু absent, তাকে আমি কি বলি কম? Non-medullated. Now come to this point. Okay, next is Protozoa is again কিমান? 4 types. আৰু এইটো কি হয়? Most primitive. Okay. This is 4 types. 4 types, ki 4 types? Haplocele, right? Actinocele, Plactocele, aru mixed Protozoa. right? So protocele is a protocele চাৰিটা part আছে haplo, actino, lacto and mix. Now talking about the first one, but talking about protocele আমি কি দেখা পাম যে centermost portion of peat present নে absent, peat absent. If peat is absent, then what is present in the center? কিবা এটা বস্তু center থাকিব লাগিব, it cannot be hollow, right? So gradually peat develop কৰিছে, peat develop কৰা আগতে তাতে কি আছিলে কিছুমান tissues আছিলে, and which tissues to be precise, it was is the point here. এটা stele যদি peat থাকে এটা I'll just say if peat is present in the stele, then what is the position? The peat always occupies the center. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
যদি এটা stele peat থাকে, peat to ক'ত হ'ব center থাকিব. যদি centerত peat নাই, তেতিয়াহ'লে centerত কি থাকিব? কিবাটো থাকিব লাগিব. It cannot be a hollow structure. Clear? So obviously there would be certain types of tissues. So what you need to remember, if peat is absent, the center is always occupied by xylem tissues. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
If peat is present in the center, you will see the peat. If peat is absent in the center, what you will see is tissues. Which group of tissues? You will see xylem tissues. Clear? Next, depending on, so protocele center of কি পাম? Center of কি পাম? Xylem. কিহৰ কাৰণে center of xylem পাম? কাৰণ peat is absent. Now, depending on the structure of the xylem, how does the xylem in the center look like? We have 4 types of protocele. So, এই যে classification to দিছে, haplocele, actinocele, plactocele, etc., etc., this classification is based on the structure of the xylem tissues or how the xylem tissues are arranged in the center. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Coming to the first one, yeah, please ask. Was there anyone asking me a question? Online class will be to problem, no? Because of network problem হৈ যায় and like the voice gets, I mean, a lot of problem with the voice. Okay. Talking about the haplocele one, okay? Protocele, always remember center থাকিব, xylem থাকিব. So in the first one, if you're talking about haplocele, diagram to কেনেকুৱা হ'ব? Centermost portion of কি থাকিব? Xylem tissues. Xylem will always be surrounded by the next tissue, that is fluid. Is the point clear? Protocele center of xylem থাকিব, xylem surrounded by phloem, phloem surrounded by pericycle, pericycle surrounded by endodermis, endodermis surrounded by cortex, cortex surrounded by epidermis. Is the point clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, in case of protocele, if the xylem is a solid central mass and is almost spherical, then that stele is called as haplocele. কি লিখা আছে চোৱাচোন? Central xylem is cylindrical but it appears round. So, মাজত থকা যদি xylem টো পুৰা round type হৈ থাকে, তেতিয়াহ'লে তাক আমি কি বুলি কম? Haplocele. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, haplocele examples saba, right? Salajila. So, iman basic stele portion of where iman specific examples of any question aha nai. Ungita questions important. But first, just look into the explanation. right? কাৰণ আহিবও পাৰে so first we understood haplocele কি center xylem to যদি round হয় বা circular হয় তেতিয়াহলে that cell is called as haplocele gradually in the process of evolution চেণ্টাৰত কি ডেভেলপ কৰিব চেণ্টাৰত পিঠ ডেভেলপ কৰিব ইনিশিয়ালি কি আছিলে জাইলাম টিস্যু আছিলে এঞ্জিওস্পাৰ্মছত আমি কি দেখা পাওঁ পিঠ দেখা পাওঁ সো সেই চেণ্টাৰমোস্ট পোৰ্শনত যদি পিঠ has to develop then obviously xylem tissues needs to break down when peat was absent it was a solid cylinder of xylem tissues gradually the xylem tissues started separating and breaking down right so next এই solid structure টো ধৰা প্ৰথমতে কেনেকুৱা আছিলে xylem টো এনেকে আছিলে ন solid আছিলে round আছিলে এটো কি আছিলে phloem next এই solid বস্তুটো কি হয় যে they have started breaking down solid or পৰা অকমান tissues ন কেনেকুৱা হৈ যাব So this time, this is xylem and obviously surrounded by the phloem. এবার xylem টো কেনেকুৱা হল star shape and when প্রথমতে কি আছিলে round xylem যদি থাকে completely xylem তেতিয়াহলে haplocele the xylem tissues started breaking off and ultimately it took a shape of a star and it is called as Kyocele. So প্ৰথমতে কি আছিলে protocele or haplocele তাৰ পিছত কি হল Kyocele. Is the concept clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So gradually the amount started decreasing. So this is called ectocele. What next? Next, in the progress of evolution, this xylem further broke down. তাৰ পিছত কি হল যে এই স্ট্রাকচারটো ভাঙাৰ পিছত now they have started arranging in the form of plates. And বাকিবোৰ কি হ'ব obviously phloem so all the remaining tissues are phloem and these plate like structure is called as xylem to plate like right and this is called as what Kyocele. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So gradually in the process of evolution আমি কি দেখা পাইছো যে xylem tissue যোনটো নেকি centermost portionত বহুত বেছিকে আছিলে gradually কি হৈছে fragments of breakdown কৰিছে প্ৰথমতে round আছিলে তাৰপিছত star shaped হ'ল তাৰপিছত plateৰ নিচিনাকে arrange হ'ল and after this side we see further division of the xylem and ultimately we see xylem in the form of fragments and this is what is called as mixed protocele. আৰু সৰু হৈ গল so this is phloem these are xylem smaller fragments and this is called as mixed protocele so during the course of evolution if you are talking about stellar evolution stellar structure started developing pteridophytes in case of pteridophytes the first stele that was formed was called as protocele or solid stele. Why was it called as a solid stele? Because the peat was absent. If in the center the peat was absent, then what was present in the center? It is the xylem tissues. If the xylem tissues forms a cylindrical structure or it forms a round structure, বহুতখিনি xylem stele একেলগে থাকে in the form of a round structure, that stele is called as haplocele and that is supposed to be the most primitive stele. right? Gradually in the process of evolution, the xylem tissues started breaking off, and then from a solid structure, they have taken the star-shaped structure that is called as actinocele. Star-shaped further breakdown hold like plator nisna hold that is called as spectrocele. Further, these plates broke down into fragments, and that is what is called as mixed protocele. Another point to remember is, since all these four diagrams are nothing are of key, they are or they belong to what? They belong to protocele. So in each and every case, teeth would be present or absent. Obviously, it would be absent. So teeth yatu absent, yatu absent, yatu absent, yatu absent. Here's the point here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Okay. Now,
Ma'am,
please ask.
ma'am, can you show a diagram where peach is present?
Where pith is present, we are talking about it gradually in the evolution.
Yes.
Next stele, right? If you're talking about stele, the primitive stele is protostele. Protostele evolves itself to form the next type of stele where you see teeth. So we'll talk about it now. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So before going to that stele structure, I mean that teeth present or absent, agote, is the concept clear? Protostele concept clear hoise nai?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if you're talking about evolution of stele, that first to ki protostele, right? Protostele key points ase we understand. The most important point, the peach is absent. It is of 4 types. After protostele, this got further evolved to form the next type of stele that is called as Siphonocoele. So primitive protostele and next type of stele ki hoy? Siphonocoele. Now points about Siphonocoele. Siphonocoele ki likhise some points? Teeth present na absent? Siphonocoele teeth present. If teeth is present, then this stele would be considered as medulated stele, non-medulated stele.
Medulated stele.
Medulated stele, very good. Now, in this type of stele, if teeth is present, what will be the position of the teeth? আমি অলরেডি কৈ আহিছো যদি পিঠ থাকে পিঠে সদায় সেন্টাৰতে থাকে যদি পিঠ নাথাকে সেন্টাৰত জাইলাম থাকে in this tissue or in this stellar structure teeth is present so পিঠ ক'ত থাকিব সেন্টাৰত থাকিব নাথাকে
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
right so what would be the diagram আৰু এটা কথা কৈছে let's talk about another information Siphonocoele is of 2 types amphiphloid এইটো portion আমি ডিসকাস কৰিম এতিয়া এই দুটা পইণ্টত আহা Siphonocoele কি থাকে পিঠ থাকে ডায়াগ্ৰামটো কেনেকুৱা হ'ব before drawing the diagram সদায় টিস্যুজৰ arrangement কেনেকুৱা E C E P epidermis cortex endodermis pericycle right এতিয়া হেতু arrangement আমাৰ মনত আছে এতিয়া কি কৈছো যে center most position কি থাকিব পিঠ থাকিব clear since it is a stellar structure the peat is present so peat থাকিব peat surrounded by কি সবতছে আগতে কি আছিল xylem tissues আছিল so xylem খিনিক আপমান separate কৰি মাজত parenchymatous tissues form কৰিলে and this is called as peat if this is peat তেতিয়া হলে the next layer কি হ'ব this is xylem clear xylem surrounded by কি surrounded by phloem. So this will be the diagram. So xylem surrounded by phloem. Phloem or pisot into layer থাকিব তাক আমি কি কম normally
Pericycle.
pericycle. Pericycle or pisot কি থাকিব endodermis. Endodermis or pisot কি থাকিব cortex. Cortex or pisot কি থাকিব epidermis. Is the diagram clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So
ma'am.
this is the diagram of Siphonocoele. Protozoa কি আছিলে centermost portion of teeth নাছিলে তো centermost portion of কি আছিলে xylem surrounded by কি surrounded by phloem. Yes, where did the green marker go? Okay, this is phloem, this is xylem in case of what? In case of protozoa. In case of Siphonocoele, centermost portion of teeth থাকিব surrounded by xylem, surrounded by phloem. Now coming to the two types of Siphonocoele. Siphonocoele can be understood, right? Siphonocoele হব লাগে কি থাকিব লাগিব centermost portion of teeth থাকিব লাগিব, teeth surrounded by xylem. Now Siphonocoele could be of two types, ectoploic and amphiploic. What we understand by the word amphi মানে কি
They can live on both water and land.
Dual character.
both. Yeah, amphi is both amphibians, both land and sea and land and water, right? So by amphi we understand both, right, is equal to the word both. So now depending on in this diagram if you see etu ki xylem etu ki phloem. What is the position of the phloem? The phloem is on the outer side of xylem. Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
In this diagram, the phloem is in the or on the outer side of xylem. If this is the condition, then this is what is called as ectoploic Siphonocoele. What is the characteristic? Only one layer of phloem tissues is present. But if you are talking about amphiploic কি হব? The xylem tissues would be surrounded by two layers of phloem. এটা বাহিৰৰ পিনে থাকিব, এটা ভিতৰৰ পিনে থাকিব। বস্তুটো বুজি পোৱা। চোৱা, মাজতটো পিঠ থাকিবই since we are talking about a Siphonocoele. পিঠৰ পিছত xylem থাকিব, xylemৰ বাহিৰলৈ কি থাকিব phloem. Always remember phloem is always towards the outer side of xylem. In case of angiosperms also we will see in plant anatomy that phloem খিনি ক'ত থাকিব xylem সদায় চেণ্টাৰৰ পিনে থাকে, phloem towards the outer side থাকে, right? Because of that so মাজত কি থাকিলে পিঠ থাকিলে, পিঠৰ পিছত xylem থাকিলে, phloem ক'ত on the outer side. Kiman layers of phloem in the diagram? Only one layer of phloem. If this is the condition, this is called ectoploic. In case of amphiploic, what did I say? Diagram to কেনেকে হ'ব? মাজত পিঠ থাকিব। Diagram to clear হৈছে নাই? তোমালোকৰ PDF ত যোনটো diagram দিয়া আছে? Right? পিঠ থাকাৰ পিছত, this one would be inner endodermis. This one would be inner pericycle. This one would be the inner phloem. কাৰণ পিঠৰ লগত লাগি পেলাই তোমাৰ ডাইৰেক্ট ফ্লোএমটো থাকিব নোৱাৰে। ফ্লোএমটো সদায় পেৰিচাইকেল দিয়ে কভাৰ কৰি থাকিব লাগিব। ৰাইট? সো মাৰ্কিং খিনি ভালকে চাবা হা। এটো হল পিঠ, পিঠৰ নেক্সট লেয়াৰটো কি হ'ব? ইনাৰ এন্ডোডাৰ্মিস। তাৰ নেক্সট লেয়াৰটো কি হ'ব? ইনাৰ পেৰিচাইকেল। Inner pericycle of pisot ami ki likhisu this green portion. This portion is inner phloem. The next layer would be ki hobo next layer to
Xylem.
Xylem, very good. Right? So this layer would be xylem, and since we are talking about what called as amphi, so phloem কেটা layer থাকিব? দুটা layer. So another layer of phloem, and this layer would be called as outer phloem. Is the point clear? Silo, diagram to silo. If only one layer of phloem is present that surrounds or that is towards the outer side of the xylem, then this type of a stele where you can see the peak is called as ectoploic siphonostyly. If the xylem is surrounded by two layers of phloem, one towards the inner side, one towards the outer side, that type of a stele is called as amphiploic siphonostyly. As far as the diagram is concerned, rest of the diagram কি হবো? Phloemৰ পিছৰ next layer to কি হবো? Outer endodermis. Next would be cortex, and next will be epidermis. So এইটো কি হবো? Epidermis. এইটো হবো outer endodermis, and next layer to hobo outer pericycle. Just take a few moments and see whether the diagram is clear or not. We are talking about stele. Stellar development of কি মনত ৰাখিব লাগিব? Primitive stele, the peat is absent. That is called as protostele. And in the center, what was present was the xylem, right? Gradually, the center started getting occupied by parenchymatous tissues, and this is what is called as peat. So protostele, next stellar structure to naam ki, it is called as siphonostyly. Siphonostyly is a stele that shows the presence of peat. Now, surrounding the peat, Zedi, we see xylem and just one layer of phloem towards the outer side of xylem. That is called as ectoploic siphonostyly. And if we see two layers of phloem, one towards the inner side of xylem and the other towards the outer side of xylem, that stele would be called as amphiploic siphonostyly. Kiba doubts ase niki?
Ma'am, amphiploic or cortex absent থাকে নাকি?
না cortex will be present. মই আখা নাই নেকি? Cortex থাকিব. This is outer phloem, this is endodermis, obviously. Etu cortex hobo. Cortex থাকিবই. Cortex, next তোমাৰ এটুত epidermis থাকিব. Clear?
Ma'am,
Hmm.
ma'am, siphonostyly to medulated protostele বুলি ক'ব পাৰি নেকি?
Yeah, it could be said as medulated protostele also.
Okay.
Right? Because in protostele, what we have seen, that the center is occupied by the xylem. In siphonostyly also, what we see, pisor xylem, right? So it could be considered as a medulated protostele.
Okay.
Is the diagram clear? Terms kita clear hoise nai? Ectoploic and amphiploic clear hoise?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, protostele we have covered. Next evolution, siphonostyly. The siphonostyly further got evolved to form the third stele, that is solenostyly. Solenostyly characteristics key, peat present may absent. Yate to peat already developed korile. Yeah, it's present because since it has already developed here, it cannot vanish So peat present. Mediulated and non-mediulated. Obviously mediulated stele. Again, it is of two types. Kiki? Ectofloic aru amphifloic. Ekhini loke siphonostyli and solonostyli at the same points that we are repeating, but there is a difference. What is the difference? What is solenostyli? Definition to key questions. Solenostyli is solenostyli is a siphonostyli. So solenostyli ki hoy? Siphonostyli hoy, but with one leaf gap. Etu sentence likha ache na nai?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Now we have to understand what is the leaf gap. Etu kihor diagram asile? Etu diagram kihor asile? Mark kori dia nai. Ectofloic what? Ectofloic siphonostyli. Right? Next, ectofloic siphonostyli আমি পঢ়াৰ পিছত কি পঢ়িছো যে siphonostyli টো further evolve কৰি পেলাই তাক আমি কি বুলি কম solenostyli. এই ডায়াগ্ৰামটোক আমি solenostyli বা next evolutionত কি হ'ব? Next evolutionত ইয়াতে এটা leaf gap form কৰিব in any place, not necessarily in the exact position where I am showing. ঠিক আছে, ডায়াগ্ৰামটো তোমালোকৰ দিয়া আছে হেৰি ক্লাছত চোৱা. So diagram to right? So solenostyli আৰু siphonostyli difference কি? যদি এটাও এনেকে গ্যাপ নাথাকে বা একো আমি ব্ৰেকেজ দেখা নাপাও তেতিয়াহলে তাক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ siphonostyli. যদি এটা এনেকুৱা siphonostyli এটুকুৰ জেগাত আমি গ্যাপ দেখা পাও, that is what is called as solenostyli. So what is solenostyli? Solenostyli is a siphonostyli with one leaf gap. So এখিনতে আমি কি দেখা পাইছো টিস্যুজ কিনি অকমান ব্ৰেকডাউন কৰিছে. এই ব্ৰেকডাউন খিনিক আমি কি বুলি কৈছো leaf gap. যদি এটা leaf gap থাকে তেতিয়াহলে আমি কি বুলি কওঁ siphonostyli. Clear? Now what is a leaf gap? So এইটো স্ট্রাকচার আমি যেহেতু স্টাডি কৰি আছো, এইটো যদি স্টেম হয় ন, এডাল প্ল্যান্টৰ যেতিয়া স্টেমডাল ডেভেলপ কৰে একদম ফাৰ্স্ট ডে পৰাই তাত লিভস ডেভেলপ নকৰে, গ্ৰাজুৱেলি ইন দ্য প্ৰসেস লিভস বিলাক ডেভেলপ কৰিব. এইটো এটা স্টেম আছিলে, স্টেমক আমি যদি টিএস কৰো ইয়াতে আমি কি দেখা পাম টিস্যু এৰিয়া এন্ড উই ক্যান সি দ্য সিলি. এই স্টেমডাল ডিউৰিং course of time তাত কি হ'ব লিভ ডেভেলপ কৰিব, ৰাইট? সো যেটা যোনখিনি জেগাত লিভ ডেভেলপ কৰিব ন এইখিনিতো তোমাৰ এটা টিএস কাটিলে আমি টিস্যুজ দেখা পাম. সো যোনখিনি জেগাত লিভটো ডেভেলপ কৰিব এই জেগাখিনিক আমি কি বুলি কৈছো লিভ গ্যাপ বুলি কৈছো. সো স্টেমটো যদি টিএস কৰো we are going to see a structure like this, right? And in that area of the stem from where the leaf will develop, it forms a gap মানে ইয়াৰ চিলিখিনি অকমান ইয়াতে ব্ৰেকডাউন কৰিব কিয় ব্ৰেকডাউন কৰিব কাৰণ যেতিয়া লিফ ডেভেলপ কৰিব লিফৰ নিজৰ ভাস্কুলাৰ বান্ডল থাকিব এই ভাস্কুলাৰ বান্ডল আৰু ষ্টেমৰ ভাস্কুলাৰ বান্ডলডাল কানেক্ট হ'ব লাগিব right so at the starting point of a leaf the steel structure that is found in the stem develops a gap this is called as a leaf gap this is the area where the leaf will be formed so the stele that has one leaf gap is called as solenostele বুজি পালো নে নাই is the point clear
Yes, ma'am.
right so প্ৰথমতে আমি কি দেখা পাইছিলো পুৰা ৰাউন্ড ব্ৰেক নাছিলে right যেতিয়া ব্ৰেক নাছিলে তাক আমি কি বুলি কৈছিলো সাইফেনোস্টিলি যেতিয়া এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ অকমান ব্ৰেক এটা দেখা পালো বা গ্যাপ এটা দেখা পালো সেই স্টিলিটোক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ সোলেনোস্টিলি সোলেনোস্টিলিত কি থাকে এটা লিফ গ্যাপ থাকে লিফ গ্যাপ মানে কি এই গোটেই স্ট্ৰাকচাৰটো আমি ক'ত দেখা পাম ষ্টেমৰ ভিতৰত দেখা পাম ষ্টেমৰ ভিতৰত নিজৰ স্টিলি আছে যোনটো পৰ্চনৰ পৰা লিফটো ডেভেলপ কৰিব সেইখিনি জেগাত ষ্টেমৰ স্টিলিটো ব্ৰেক কৰে আৰু এটা গ্যাপ ফৰ্ম কৰে সেই গ্যাপটোক আমি কি কৈছো লিফ গ্যাপ এতিয়া when we are talking about leaf gap we have to talk about leaf trace also now what are the leaf trace we have talked about the development of a leaf right leaf will have its own vascular bundle this vascular bundle will get connected with the vascular bundle of the stem and so this connection is called as leaf trace এডাল ষ্টেম থাকিব ষ্টেমৰ ভিতৰত বা ষ্টেমৰ তাৰ নিজৰ ষ্টিলি থাকিব during the development of leaf that stiller structure will break down at the point where the leaf will develop that gap is called as a leaf gap once the leaf is formed the vascular bundle needs to maintain a connection between the stem and the leaf so that transportation is possible that joining য'ত নেকি লিফৰ ভাস্কুলাৰ বান্ডল আৰু ষ্টেমৰ ভাস্কুলাৰ বান্ডল যোনডাল পইণ্টেৰে বা যোনডাল লাইনেৰে লাগে আমি কি বুলি কম লিফ ট্ৰেচ বুলি কম the two definitions are given in your PDF just go through the lines for a second and see whether you have understood or not এটা question কি আহে the question that is important is what is solenostele hai solenostele is a cypherostele with one leaf gap যদি বেছিকে leaf gap আছে তেতিয়া তাকে আমি বেলেগ এটা নাম দিম যদি এটা leaf gap আছে তেতিয়া আমি তাক solenostele বুলি কম next the next point is if you are talking about the leaf gap hey leaf gap tot key tissues present or key tissues absent in the leaf gap you will see so a gap to really hollow hoi thakibo nware right obviously it will have certain types of tissues but which tissues to be precise it is parenchymatous tissues so in the leaf gap you will see parenchymatous tissues what is absent in the leaf gap is xylem and phloem so question ahe leaf gap of xylem phloem present na absent leaf gap of stem or xylem phloem khini absent hobo নিজৰ যেতিয়া লিফটোৱে নিজৰ জাইলেম ফ্লোয়েম ডেভেলপ কৰিব তাহাঁতৰ জাইলেম ফ্লোয়েম খিনি ষ্টেমৰ জাইলেম ফ্লোয়েম খিনি লগত লগ লাগিব that connection is called as a leaf trace
Ma'am, and there's a point one this one like horseshoe shape what does that mean
yeah I'll come to I'll come to that where exactly did you find that point
above the diagram that page
oh yes the second second point right okay due to ekhiloke buji paisa nai what is the leaf gap what is the leaf trace what are the tissues that are present here what are the tissues that are absent here this points are clear
yes ma'am
okay now coming to the shape of solenocele, right? Solenocele to কেনেকুৱা বুলি কৈছে, it takes a horseshoe shape structure. Means what? If you are talking about a round structure, ঠিক আছে, round এটা structure কথা কৈ আছা, এই round structure টো যদি মাজতে ভাঙি যায় ন, gap হৈ যায়, এইটো কেনেকুৱা? horseshoe shape হলে নাই, এটা
Yes,
round,
ma'am.
right? Round to bhangi gol, it has taken a particular shape and this shape is called as K, horseshoe shape, right? So that is the reason why solenocele is said to have this shape. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
If this is clear, I think we can go to the next. আমি কি কি পঢ়িলো আজি? We have talked about protocele without teeth. Protocele got evolved to Cyphinocele. Cyphinocele, teeth present. It was a solid structure. Cyphinocele got evolved to solenocele. Solenocele কি আছে? One leaf gap. Clear? Now, if the Cyphinocele has এইখিনিলৈকে clear? চোৱা, look at this point. Firstly, কি আছিলে? Protocele. Protocele পৰা next কি develop কৰিছে? Cyphinocele. Cyphinocele যদি এটা leaf cap থাকে, তাক আমি কি বুলি কম? Solenocele. Cyphinocele যদি many leaf cap থাকে, তাক আমি কি বুলি কম? Dictyocele. So during the course of evolution, the next thing that we are going to discuss is Dictyocele. Is the point clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? This diagram, okay, this diagram talks about what? This diagram shows only one leaf cap. এই diagram tote যদি আমি বেলেগ বেলেগকে ভাঙি দিও, আৰু বহুত leaf caps দেখাই দিও, এইটো এটা leaf cap দেখালো, এইটো এটা leaf cap দেখালো, এইটো এটা leaf cap দেখালো, so this time কিমান leaf cap দেখা পাইছা? How many leaf gaps? Many leaf gaps, right? So this is one gap, this is another gap, this is another gap, this is another gap. If it is divided into many gaps, then it is called as Dictyocele. So original diagram to কিহৰ আছিলে? Cyphinocele, right? Cyphinocele যদি এটা leaf gap থাকে, এটা পাৰ্টত ব্ৰেক কৰে, তেতিয়া তাক আমি কি বুলি কম? Solenocele. যদি Cyphinocele টোত বহুতটা leaf gap থাকে, তেতিয়াহ'লে তাক আমি কি কম? Dictyocele.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, some points about Dictyocele. In case of Dictyocele, what is the number of leaf caps? Many. right? So এইবিলাক leaf gap for karone, right? So if you are talking about the leaf gaps, no, এনেকুৱা এটা fragment form কৰিলে নাই? This is one fragment, this is another fragment. প্ৰথমতে solid হৈ আছিলে, round হৈ আছিলে, তাৰপিছত ভাঙি ফালে এটা section form কৰিলে নাই? Break হোৱাৰ কাৰণে here. Because of the development of many leaf gaps, what we can see is certain fractions now, right? Each and every fraction is called as meristyle. So, dictyostele আমি কি দেখা পাম? এইটো ধৰা epidermis, cortex, pericycle গোটেইবিলাক আকা নাই আৰু দেই। Suppose এইটো আমাৰ endodermis, centermost portion তো obviously pith থাকিব। Pith থাকাৰ পিছত আমি ইয়াতে কি দেখা পাম? যে কিছুমান sections দেখা পাম। এইবিলাক এই sections কিহৰ কাৰণে form কৰিলে? কাৰণ বহুত বিলাক leaf gaps develop কৰিলে, leaf gaps বিলাক develop কৰাৰ কাৰণে এটা section দেখা পালো। So এইবিলাকক আমি কি বুলি কম? Sorry, meristyle. Is the point clear? এটা solid structure যেতিয়া বহুতবাৰ ভাঙি যাব, ভাঙি গলে তাহলে কি form কৰিব? কিছুমান fragments form কৰিব। Where or up till which portion you all have heard? কোনটো portion লৈকে শুনা পালা? Did you understand the concept of meristyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In which type of a stele you will see the presence of meristyle? You will see it
Yes.
in the stele that is called as dictyostele, right? So protostele, protostele পিছত siphonostele, siphonostele পিছত solenostele, soleনৰ পিছৰটো এটা dictyostele. So dictyostele কি দেখা পাবা? এনেকুৱা এটা structure. In case of dictyostele, pith present ne absent? Obviously pith is present because dictyostele is nothing but a key. Solenostele itself. Is the point clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Dictyostele pith থাকিব না থাকে? থাকিবই ন? কিয় থাকিব? কাৰণ dictyostele টো ক'ৰ পৰা evolve হৈছে? Solenostele পৰা evolve হৈছে. So pith would always be present, right? Now, we understood the concept of meristyle. এতিয়া meristyle এটা point কি মনত ৰাখিব লাগিব? Just go through the notes কি লিখা আছে চাওকচোন। Siphonostele with many leaf gaps is called as dictyostele, which is also called as polystele. In dicotyledons, many meristeles are present, or in dictyostele, many meristeles are present. Meristele কি হয়? Each fragmented part is called as a meristele. It is a complete stele. You have to read that word complete. Complete কিয় বুলি কৈছে? Because these small fragments will have their own pericycle and their endodermis. So এই বস্তুটো যদি আমি এটা ডাঙৰকে আঁকো, এটা মেৰিষ্টিলিত আমি কি দেখা পাম? Xylem surrounded by phloem, surrounded by pericycle, surrounded by endodermis. So কি দেখা পাম? Endodermis, pericycle, phloem, xylem. এটু কি হয়? Since this small fragment has their own endodermis and their own pericycle and obviously xylem and phloem, so it is said to be a complete stele. Is the point clear?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
meristele is a complete stele. The question is, एक दूसरे को की होय? Dictyostele, right? Where you will see the meristele. Eta meristele enlarge কৰি পেলাই আমি এনেকে দেখা পাইছো. Question that is asked is, in meristele, is peat present নে absent? Peat দেখা পাইছো নেকি ইয়াতে?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Because peat is always present here and not inside these. Clear? So this type of a structure is called as Kyocele, and this is the stellar structure that you see in pteridophytes. So what we said is stellar structure started developing in pteridophytes. So in pteridophytes, some species you will see the presence of the primitive stele, and in some cases you will see the presence of Kyocele. Primitive stele ক'ত থাকিব? Primitive pteridophytes আৰু সবতছে advanced stele ক'ত থাকিব? In case of advanced pteridophytes. If I am talking about a fern, fernৰ যোনটো stellar structure হ'ব, সেইটো কেনেকুৱা হ'ব? Kyocele. Now, if the question that is asked is, what is the most advanced type of stele in pteridophytes? The most advanced type of stele in pteridophytes is Kyocele. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. The next statement, please listen to it carefully. Since we are talking about stele, stele ক'ত develop কৰে? Pteridophytes develop কৰে. অকল pteridophytes তে দেখা পাও নে gymnosperms আৰু angiosperms তে দেখা পাও? সবতে দেখা পাও. So evolution cannot stop in pteridophytes. It gets or it keeps on evolving until it reaches angiosperms. So after Kyocele also, the stellar structure will continue evolution. So pteridophytes of advanced A2, kintu, if the question is asked, what is the most advanced stele? Read the question properly. The question সুধিব পাৰে. What is the most advanced stele and what is the most advanced stele in case of pteridophytes? যদি pteridophytes were to mention কৰি দিয়ে, the answer would be Kyocele. যদি pteridophytes were to mention নকৰে, what is the most advanced stele? The answer would be the stele that is seen in case of monocots. That is the most advanced stele. Our naam ki Ectectostele. We'll discuss it later. Is the point clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, pteridophytes or pisot. After pterido, we will see gymno. Pteridophytes or kiholokhe thakile Kyocele. After Kyocele, the next type of stele is eucele. Please go to that page. In this type of stele, the vascular bundles are arranged in a ring. I think the proper diagram is given, right? So vascular bundles are properly at a ring arranged koribo, right? Medullary rays are also present between the vascular bundles. ডাঙৰ plants বিলাকত বা advanced plants বিলাকত apart from xylem and phloem, এটো যদি center হয়, centerত যদি এইবিলাক xylem phloem কে থাকে, এইবিলাক ধৰা xylem phloem, right? তে মাজৰ খিনিক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? Peat বুলি কওঁ. ইয়াতে within the vascular bundles কিছুমান আমি ray-like cells দেখা পাওঁ. এইবিলাক আমি পিছত এমাদাৰিত clear হ'ম. এই ray-like cells within the vascular bundles তাক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? Medullary rays. Medullary rays আমি generally pteridophytes বা lower plants দেখা পোৱা নাছিলো, right? As the plant gets evolved, as the water necessity increases, we see the development of other tissues or certain ray-like tissues within the vascular bundles. These are called as medullary rays. Medullary rays or কাম কি lateral conduction of water আমি anatomy clear কে পঢ়িম এতিয়া খালি মনত ৰখা যে দ্বিতীয় চিলিৰ পিছৰ যোনটো চিলি সেই চিলিটোত আমি কি দেখা পাম all the vascular bundles arranged in a ring and within the vascular bundles you see certain ray-like tissues and that is called as medullary rays. This type of a ciliar structure is called as eucili. Next point is eucili আমি ক'ত দেখা পাম pteridophytes লোকেটো দ্বিতীয় চিলি দেখা পালো. Next group eucili in case of gymnosperms and also in case of dicots. Another point that you should always remember, whenever we are talking about vascular bundles, especially in case of angiosperms, duta word angiosperms has been divided into two categories, monocots and dicots. In both categories, you will see the vascular bundle. Kintu কোনটো ডাইকট হয় কোনটো মনোকট হয় আমি আইডেন্টিফাই কেনেকৈ কৰিম we can identify by looking at the arrangement of the vascular tissues বিলাক কেনেকৈ arrange হৈ আছে always remember in case of a dicot the vascular tissues are always arranged in a form of a ring এটা particular তাহাতৰ arrangement থাকিব এটো ক'ত থাকিব in case of a dicot. In case of a monocot, the vascular tissue will not be arranged in a ring, but they will remain scattered. A point of মনে রাখিবা scattered মানে কি arranged in a ring মানে কি সব আমি anatomy কৰিম as of now a point to সদায় মনে ৰাখিবা dicots or vascular bundles properly arranged হৈ থাকে এটা ring হ'ব পাৰে দুটা ring হ'ব পাৰে diagram টো already দিয়া আছে কিন্তু monocots or vascular bundles বিলাক scattered হৈ থাকিব এটা proper position তে নাথাকে so in eucili vascular bundles কেনেকৈ দেখা পাইছো arranged in a ring whenever we hear that word arranged in a ring that is enough to identify it as a dicot. So this type of a stele would be found in gymnosperms and also in the dicots of angiosperms. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. After eucili, we have the next group of stele that is called as ectectocele. Ectectocele is considered as the most advanced type of stele. Where is it found? It is found in the most advanced type of plants. Which plants to be precise? The monocots. In the monocots, vascular bundles keneke arrange hoy thake? Sodai eta word ki monot rakhim? Scattered. So in ectectocele, we see the vascular bundles remaining scattered, right? Eta proper ring of nathake. So question ahe, vascular bundles in a ring is a characteristic of dicot and monocot. Vascular bundles found scattered is a characteristic of dicot and monocot. It's a characteristic of monocot. So ectectocele, in this type of cele, many vascular bundles remain scattered in the ground tissues. Endodermis and pericycle are absent in ectectocele. Very, very important. It is the most advanced type of cele. Now, so ectectocele vascular bundles will are scattered হৈ থাকে ক'ত scattered হৈ থাকে where are they scattered they are scattered or they remain scattered in the ground tissues right now what is the ground tissue lower class of তোমালোকে epidermal tissues পঢ়িছা নাই ground tissue word শুনিছা নে আগতে
No, ma'am.
okay I'll tell you okay doesn't matter Swa. Anatomy, again, plant anatomy, the next to next chapter, again, all these things would be more clearer. As of now, what is a ground tissue? So, in normal conditions, discuss when we are talking about a dicot stem, right? Normally, example, TS of a dicot stem কৰিলে আমি টিস্যুস বিলাক কেনেকৈ অ্যারেঞ্জ দেখা পাও যে এটু হল তোমার epidermis next we have the cortex next we have the endodermis, and next layer we have the pericycle. Here, এটা তো জানো আমি, right? Our pericycle or in and around it, we have talked about stele, our tarbitorami, vascular bundles form. So dicot stem of EC, EP. In case of a dicot stem, a line কি denote কৰিছে pericycle. Pericycle or ভিতৰত কি দেখা পাম বা inner to pericycle আমি কি দেখা পাম vascular bundles. Portion খিনি কি বুলি কম stele. Innermost portion of কি বুলি কম pith. This is the concept that we have studied today. So if it is a dicot, then vascular bundles বিলাক কেনেকে arrange হৈ থাকিব ধুনীয়াকে in the form of a ring, right? So এটা proper ring এটা arrange হৈ থাকিব, right? Etu eta vascular bundle, etu eta vascular bundles. There are so many vascular bundles, but they are arranged in a particular position. What is the position? In the stele. This is in case of a dicot. But in case of a monocot stem, no, ami pisao thake, monocot stem, ami ei sequence to dekha na pao. Monocot stem or jodi CF kata, what you will see is, you will see the outer layer that is called the epidermis. Our epidermis or pisot, gutei tissues bilakok. Jiman tissues ase. Gutei ami ki koi thoi dim? Cortex. Ekon ki epidermis. Etia vascular bundle as we have already used the word scattered. Called scattered হৈ থাকিব in the cortical tissue. ইয়াতো থাকিব পাৰে, ইয়াতো থাকিব পাৰে, ইয়াতো থাকিব পাৰে, ইয়াতো থাকিব পাৰে. Are you understanding the meaning between arranged in a ring and scattered? দুইটা বুজি পাইছা নাই? প্ৰথমতে হেইটো চোৱা। এটা proper position যদি থাকে, right? That is arranged in a ring. ক'ত দেখা পাম? Dicotত. Monocotত কি দেখা পাম? Scattered. Scattered ক'ত থাকিব? In the cortical tissues. Monocotsৰ এই গুটেই জেগাখিনি, এই গুটেই cells বিলাকক cortex বুলি নকৈ পেলাই আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? Ground tissues. Is the point clear now? We don't use the word, we don't use the word ground tissue in case of dicots because in dicots we see this proper arrangement. But in this case, we do not see this proper arrangement. Ki present, ki absent. Monocotot epidermis present, present. Cortex present, present. Endodermis present, no. Pericycle present, no. So jikono eta tissue structure jedi endodermis aru pericycle nathake, that entire tissue is considered as the ground tissue. So in monocots, what do you see? Ground tissues. In dicot, what do you see? Separate sequence of epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is all about stele, right? So what is important from the stele? Stele important, the most advanced type of stele in pteridophytes, the most advanced stele as a whole, and certain examples that we have given in the note, right? Agote ki asile, teeth nasile, gradual evolution of teeth develop korile, teeth develop korile, leaf gap bilako develop korise. Another important is, what is meristele? What is the tissue that is present? What is the tissue that is absent? Meristele teeth hasane nai, very, very important. Another important question is, who has given the concept of stele, the name of the scientist? And the last important question is, stellar structure started developing in which group of plants in case of pteridophytes? So after here, what we have completed is, we have completed the group called the pteridophytes. We have completed algae. After algae, bryophytes complete korilu, it is pteridophytes complete process, right? Next group is gymnosperms. Gymnosperms, talking about gymnosperms, gymnosperms are আমি কি মনত ৰাখিম? Gymnosperms বুলি ক'লে the most common example, Ficus and Pinus, right? Next, we remember a word that is called as Conifers, right? So Coniferous is a group of gymnosperms. Each and every gymnosperm conifer নহয় কিন্তু, ঠিক আছে? কিন্তু আমি যোনটো commonly they are in the form of a cone and so they are called as conifers. Third point, gymnosperms of vascular bundle থাকে নে না থাকে? Vascular bundles are present but well defined or most advanced vascular bundles absent. Why it is not well defined? Because xylem lacks vessels, or phloem lacks companion cells. Exact the same explanation that we had discussed during pteridophytes. Pteridophytes are to vascular bundles ase, gymnosperms are to vascular bundles ase. Pteridophytes are to vessels absent, gymnosperms are to vessels absent, except certain exceptions. Our exception gita reported question, especially nitam. Nitam is an example of a gymnosperm where you can see the vessel. So again, if you are talking about a group, as we have already mentioned, eta group of primitive members thakibo, advanced members thakibo. So primitive gymnosperms, obviously vessels are absent. But if you're talking about the most advanced group of gymnosperms, and nitam is one of the example, so nitamot ki thakibo, vessels thakibo, karon that group will have certain characteristics with the angiosperms also, and angiosperms ki thakibo, vessels ase. So gymnosperms are highest group to ki thakibo, vessels present. Third point. Fourth point is about the plant body. Plant body, gametophyte ne sporophyte. In the entire plant kingdom, apart from algae, no, bryophytes onward, bryophyte or plant body to hai gametophyte, bakibur sob ki hoy, sporophyte. Sporophyte jedi hoy, you will see distinct stem, leaves and roots. So, in case of gymnosperm, the plant body is a sporophyte. It will have distinct leaves, stems and roots. Talking about stems and talking about, okay, let's start with roots. Gymnosperms or roots kenekwa. When we talk about roots, we know duta word associated. Either it's a taproot system or it's an adventitious root system. Gymnosperms are roots like kenekwa, adventitious ne tap. Obviously, it's a taproot system. They will have a taproot system. The roots are very strong. You cannot uproot a gymnosperm easily. Junbilak plants or adventitious roots থাকে বা fibrous roots থাকে তাহাতক আমি easily uproot কৰিব পাৰিম. For example, if you are talking about a rice plant, right? Or you are talking about any other sugarcane. এইবিলাক plant কি easily আমি uproot কৰিব পাৰো. But if you are talking about a mango tree, if you are talking about the pine, or you are talking about a cycas, so obviously you cannot uproot. What is the reason behind? Their root system is very strong and it penetrates deeper down. So এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ root system বিলাকক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? Taproot. Details about taproot in the morphology class. As of now, gymnosperms or roots kenekwa? Taproot. Next, when you are talking about roots in gymnosperms, দুটা specific examples আমি সদায় ক'ব লাগিব. One is cycas and the other is spinous. So cycas spinous or যোনটো point আছে ন তোমালোকৰ PDF very very important. In case of cycas and also in case of spinous, দুইডাল plantor rootত symbiotic association দেখা পাবা. Right? Cycasত এটা symbiotic association থাকে আৰু spinousত এটা symbiotic association থাকে. Spinousত কি থাকে? Mycorrhizal association. We have already talked about it. So mycorrhizal association is found in the root of cycas, the root of spinous. It is found in the root of spinous. In the root of cycas, you see a root that is called as corelloid root. So cycas plant dalor junto root hoy, they are of two types. The normal taproot and certain roots look like coral. Do you understand a coral? See, under sea a marine creature, corals, a bush type. Is the point clear? Coral buzi pao no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so in case of especially in case of cycas, you see two different structure of a root. One, the normal root, that's the taproot. And eta type of morphological root kenekwa je tahator roots bilak okman branch or nisna hobo. It's bushy. Why is it bushy? Because it is associated in a symbiotic relationship with the blue-green algae. So iman details of nahe question ahibo. Corelloid root is a characteristic of cycas ne pinus. It is a characteristic of cycas. Second, corelloid rootot কি association থাকে? Mycorrhizal association থাকে ne blue-green algae লগত association থাকে. It has a symbiotic association with blue-green algae. So those 2 points are very very important in case of the root section. যিকেইটা point that's all. In case of stem আকৌ গোটেই gymnospermটোত আমি cycas pinus, these are the 2 points, the examples that we are going to study. In case of stems বিলাকত আমি দুটা point very important, unbranched stem and a branched stem. So unbranched stem আমি ক'ত দেখা পাওঁ, branched stem আমি ক'ত দেখা পাওঁ. Unbranched stem in case of ficus, branched stem in case of pinus. Important point from this part. And welwitschia, that means stem is very small or absent. What is welwitschia? One example of a fossil gymnosperm. Both agote asile ajikali napai. That's an example of a fossil gymnosperm. So stems are absent in welwitschia. Next, coming to the leaf section. When we are talking about leaves of gymnosperm, we come across two words: simple leaf, compound leaf. এই দুটা word আগতে শুনিছান নাই? Simple leaf or compound leaf. Have you heard the words? What is the basic difference between a simple leaf and a compound leaf? What is a simple leaf? What is a compound leaf? কি হয়?
And simple leaf, no branching.
Leafৰ branching থাকে জানো? Okay, you are talking about the petiole, no? ঠিক আছে বাৰু. Okay, মোক এটা কথা কবাচোন. Right? তিনটা leaf ৰাখিছো. Okay, before coming to this word, আমি কি জানিব লাগিব leafৰ? The simple leaf, compound. What is simple? What is compound? We'll explain. From gymnosperm's point of view, simple leaf কাৰ থাকে, compound leaf কাৰ থাকে. In case of pinus, you see simple leaf. In case of ficus, you see compound leaf. Right? Another point of leaves is leaves are of three types. আমি কি কি leaf দেখা পাওঁ? Needle-like leaf. Right? That is a characteristic of pinus. Next, we see foliage leaf. Foliage leaf মানে normal যোনটো green color photosynthetic leaf হয়, তাক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? যোনটা normal আমি এনেকা leaf দেখা পাওঁ. That is called as foliage leaf. Needle leaf, needle type, একদম মিহি type, যোনটো নেকি আমি pine দেখা পাওঁ, no? That is called as a needle leaf. And apart from this leaf, আৰু এটা leaf that is present, that is called as scaly leaves. What is a scaly leaf? A leaf that is not green in color, it is brown in color. So obviously it is non-photosynthetic. What is the function of a scaly leaf? Suppose এইটো যদি trunk হয়, এই trunk কিছুমান এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ brown leaves দেখা পাওঁ, more precisely seen in the trunk of ficus. এই brown leaves বিলাকক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? Scaly leaves. Obviously non-photosynthetic. What is the function? They increases the girth of the stem. Stem to শকত দেখাই দিয়ে because of the presence of this scaly leaves. These are comparatively harder and pointed structures. Right? So এইখিনি আছিলে leaves ৰ ওপৰত. আৰু এটা কথা মনত ৰাখিবা, যোনকেইটা point ficus আৰু pinus দিছে সেইকেইটা point mark কৰি থৈ দিবা. Branched stem কাৰ, unbranched stem কাৰ. Ficusৰ rootত কি association আছে, pinusৰ rootত কি association আছে. Simple leaves কাৰ আছে, compound leaves কাৰ আছে. সদায় এটা comparative study কৰিবা. ঠিক আছে? You make your own point. Now coming to this point, we are talking about, just to have an idea, simple আৰু compound. মই ইয়াতে তিনটা leaf আঁকিছো. So can you identify simple leaf কোনটো আৰু compound leaf কোনটো?
And first to simple or last to compound.
এইটোক আমি কি বুলি কৈছো? Compound.
Compound.
This one?
Simple leaf.
Simple. What about this one? Okay. Compound leaf আমি এনেকে ৰাখিব পাৰো ন? যাৰ সৰু সৰু এনেকে leaflets থাকে. বহুতবিলাক leaflets থাকে. তাকো আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? Compound leaf. গোটেইটোক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? Leaf. Right? The entire structure is called as a leaf, and these small structures are called as leaflets. যেনেকে root থাকে, rootৰ পৰা সৰু সৰু roots যোনবিলাক ওলাই, তাক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? Rootlets. Leaf, এটা ডাঙৰ leaf to leaf, তাক যোনবিলাক সৰু সৰু part থাকে, তাক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ? Leaflets. Obviously, this is a compound leaf. Now, what is the basic difference between a simple and a compound leaf? The basic difference is, যদি এটা leafৰ middle lamella বা mid vein mid vein would be the more precise word. যদি mid vein ডাল leafৰ লেমিনাটোৱে টাচ নকৰে আৰু তেতিয়াহলে তাক আমি কি বুলি কম সিম্পল চোৱাচোন এডাল কি হয় মিডৰিবক এই পাৰ্টটোক কি বুলি কম মাৰ্জিন অফ আ লিফ ন যদি মাৰ্জিনটোৱে টাচ কৰা নাই it is one leaf and this is called as an entire leaf or a simple leaf in this case also this is the midrib ইয়াতে কি আছে লিফটো অকমান ইনসাইজড হৈ আছে incision or cut you see an incision but this incision has not touched the midrib so this is also an example of simple leaf যেতিয়া লিফৰ মাৰ্জিনে midrib to touch কৰে then it gets divided into two parts and then it is called as a compound leaf so this is the basic concept of a simple and a compound leaf এটা লিফক আমি কেনেকৈ আইডেন্টিফাই কৰিম কোনটো simple আৰু কোনটো compound যদি mid vein ডালক চুই পেলাই it gets or it cuts the leaf into two parts then it is a compound if it does not touch it is the entire leaf it is called as a simple leaf clear details in the morphology class এটা তো আইডিয়া simple আৰু compound কি হয় right
Yes, ma'am.
okay another point about gymnosperms gymnosperm that group of plant is considered as the smallest in the plant kingdom of imanpur plants ase no starting from algae to angiosperm the smallest group is obviously gymnosperms right so hey point to monot rakhibo libo kihor karone smallest karon tahator members bilak maximum of their members are extinct আমি যেতিয়া classification পঢ়িম then we will see that maximum of the gymnosperms have become extinct দুটামান ফসিল আছে আৰু অকল আমি কনিফেৰেল গ্ৰুপটোহে বেছিকে পাওঁ বাকি যিমানবোৰ গ্ৰুপছ আছিলে বহুত মেম্বাৰ্স বিলাক extinct হৈছে that is one reason second reason if you are talking about conifers if you are talking about species of gymnosperms তাহাতৰ reproduction time বহুত বেছি for example pollen grain এটা dispersed হৈ পেলাই stigmat কৰিলে stigmat কৰাৰ পিছত pollination হৈ পেলাই fertilization হ'ব লাগিছিলে if the process is faster then obviously reproduction would be faster যদি process to slow hoy if it takes a lot of time then the number of offspring that is produced is less and ultimately that brings the entire group into fewer number so dutaman karoner karone ki hoy gymnosperms is considered as the most smallest group of the plant kingdom what is the best explanation the best explanation is since many of its members have become extinct so it is considered as the smallest group in the plant kingdom right next gymnosperms another point if you are talking about gymnosperms they are said to be naked seeded plants seeds present or absent obviously present covered seed and naked seed they have naked seeds what we understand by the word naked seed when the ovule is not covered by the ovary it is called as a naked seed clear
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
So these are the points apart from these points in the PDF tinta point PDF of my hegita likhiba gymnosperms of point likha most ancient group of seed plants বুলি ক'লে it is the gymnosperms they are placed in the division spermatophyta. Spermatophyta মানে seed bearing plants along with angiosperms. And finally, the third point, most of its members have become extinct. সেইকাৰণে smallest group in the plant kingdom. So, 18 point nasile. So, please write it down. And rest, I think this is also today. So, gymnosperms are just introduction kini ami korilo. In the next class, we are going to continue with gymnosperms. Just see whether you have any doubts in this section. Take your time and go through the notes.
Ma'am,
Hmm.
ma'am, Dictyostele দুটা terms আছে polycyclic আৰু dicyclic. Meaning to কি হয়?
Polycyclic or dicyclic. So, Dictyostele বুলি কোৱা লগে লগে Dictyostele আমি কি পাম? Vascular bundles বিলাক পাম বা meristele পাম ন? Meristele বিলাক চোৱা এটা ৰিঙত এৰেঞ্জ হৈ আছে vascular bundles নে দুটা ৰিঙত এৰেঞ্জ হৈ আছে যদি এনেকে 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 আছে ন যদি এটা ৰিঙত এৰেঞ্জ হৈ আছে that is তুমি কোনখিনি জেগাত আছিলে Dictyostele ন 1 second
Yes, ma'am.
Meristele is arranged in one ring দিয়া আছে ন আৰু they are arranged in two rings. Right? If they are arranged in two rings, they are called as dicyclic or polycyclic. আমি যেটো diagram দিছো PDF তাত কি দেখাইছো meristele is arranged in one ring. যদি আৰু এনেকে meristele থাকে they will have two rings. এটা ring of meristele, second ring of meristele, তাক আমি কি বুলি কম dicyclic or polycyclic. Here,
Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
please go through the notes. Are you allowed to take this one?
Ma'am,
Hmm.
ma'am, সেই যে ground টিটো আমি কৰিলো ma'am, monocot stemত, তাত মানে ma'am cortex তোকে ma'am ground tissue বুলি ক'ব পাৰি নেকি ma'am?
Exactly. পিছলে আমি পঢ়িম তাৰমানে গোটেই টিস্যু চিষ্টেমটোত নহয় গোটেই টিস্যু যিমানবোৰ দেখা পাওঁ গোটেই টিস্যুজ বিলাকক তিনটা টিস্যু চিষ্টেমত ডিভাইড কৰিছে এপিডাৰ্মিছ টিস্যু চিষ্টেম গ্ৰাউণ্ড টিস্যু চিষ্টেম আৰু ভাস্কুলাৰ টিস্যু চিষ্টেম গ্ৰাউণ্ড টিস্যু চিষ্টেম আমি কেতিয়া ইউজ কৰিম যেতিয়া তাৰ এণ্ডোডাৰ্মিছ আৰু পেৰিচাইকেল নাথাকে যদি এণ্ডোডাৰ্মিছ আৰু পেৰিচাইকেল দেখা পোৱা তেতিয়াহ'লে আমি গ্ৰাউণ্ড টিস্যু বুলি হেৰি কৰি ৰেসপেক্টিভ টাৰ্মছ বিলাক দিম right so monocots আমি generally cortex বুলি নকৈ পেলাই ground tissue as a whole কৈ থৈ দিওঁ কাৰণ সেইটো point important
Ma'am, monocots ma'am teeth ma'am পাই নেকি ma'am দেখা পাম ma'am teeth
দেখা পাও নে নাপাও monocot which monocot you are talking about either you are talking about the stem or you are talking about the root কাৰণ teeth ক'ত দেখা পাবা center rootতেটো দেখা পাম না একদম centermost portion of leafot to teeth দেখা নাপাও so if you are talking about monocots teeth is only present in a monocot root and not in a monocot stem
okay ma'am
সেইকাৰণে গোটেই টিস্যুজ খিনি কি বুলি কৈছো আমি গ্ৰাউণ্ড টিস্যুজ কৈ থৈছো ন আমাৰ পিঠ নাথাকে কাৰণ পিঠ ক'ত থাকিব পেৰিচাইকেলৰ within the পেৰিচাইকেল হে পিঠ দেখা পাবা ইয়াতেতো পেৰিচাইকেলে নাই
yes ma'am thank you ma'am
any more questions okay another point please listen After this class, as usual, video lecture paba. Video lecture দুটা পাবা most probably. ঠিক আছে, go to the video lectures. Stealer portion discuss কৰাৰ পিছত before starting gymnosperms, you will see that we have discussed certain questions on the topic pteridophytes. So, আকৌ এবাৰ আগতেও তোমালোকে কৰিছিলা ন bryophytes কিছুমান questions লিখিবলৈ দিছিলো. I think you all have written it down from the video lecture. Similarly, this time also, video lecture to চাবা gymnosperms start হোৱাৰ আগত কিছুমান questions discuss কৰা আছে. Please note down the session and don't forget. Is that clear?
Yes,
Right,
ma'am.
see, questions তোমালোকক help কৰিব. Right? Don't just think, ma'am কৈছে আৰু does not matter. Please don't do that. Okay? Go through the lectures. গোটেইখিনি নাচালেও হ'ব কাৰণ যি বুজাইছো that is the same thing itself but in a more systematic way. Right? So, after completion of pteridophytes, some questions on pteridophytes has been discussed. Please write it down. Any doubts, Nai? I think, yeah.
Ma'am, sunken stomata ki meaning ki hai?
Sunken stomata, yeah. In case of xerophytes, no, so gymnosperms বিলাক কেনেকুৱা কন্ডিশনত গ্ৰো কৰে gymnosperms বুলি ক'লে cycus spinous pine tree ক'ত দেখা পাইছা pine দেখা পাইছা নে নাই have you seen a pine tree
Ma'am, real life ত দেখা নাই.
শিলঙলৈ গৈছা নাই শিলঙত it's full of pine trees right বৰাপানী side হেপিনে যদি যোৱা তেতিয়া চাবা ঠিক আছে okay just tell you so pine trees বিলাক বা coniferals right gymnosperms normally আমি কি বুলি কওঁ pine is an example of a coniferal কিয় কাৰণে coniferal বুলি কওঁ they are cone shaped next question cone shaped trees আমি ক'ত দেখা পাওঁ গৰম জেগাত দেখা পাওঁ নে ঠাণ্ডা জেগাত দেখা পাওঁ
ঠাণ্ডা জাগাত.
ঠাণ্ডা জেগাত দেখা পাওঁ next point ঠাণ্ডা জেগাবিলাকত পানী বেছিকে পাওঁ নে কমকে পাওঁ মানে the plants growing in those areas right তাহাতে যোনখিনি পানী absorb কৰিব তাহাতৰ কাৰণে পানী easily available not I mean comparatively less available
Less available.
Less available.
less available কিহৰ কাৰণে কাৰণ hilly area বৰষুণ দিব পানীবোৰ itu slide down ground water বেছি নাথাকে so তেনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ জেগাত যোনবিলাক plants grow কৰিব those plants will always grow in a water scarce condition আৰু waterless condition বা কম পানী থকা জেগাত যোনবিলাক plants grow কৰে they are called as xerophytes right less of water these xerophytes for example pine is an example of a xerophyte কাৰণ less water conditionত grow কৰে plants বিলাকে transpire kore have you heard the word called as transpiration
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
right what is transpiration loss of water by the plant body now think of that xerophyte ki june neki company grow kore tahate pani absorb korise tahator jodi transpiration hoise what will happen the amount of water they have absorbed everything will get lost right tahate prothom to kom pani paise so they cannot afford to lose all the water because of that fact just to check the process of transpiration they have special anatomical and morphological adaptations কিছুমান তাহাতৰ specific conditions থাকে right এটা next point is we know plants বিলাকে transpire কৰে transpire কোনটো structure দি কৰে transpiration occurs through which
Stomata.
structure
Leaves.
stomata yeah exactly leafot stomata থাকিব stomata টোতে transpiration হয় stomata বোৰ present on the epidermis so epidermis of the stomata to থাকে direct sun rays পৰিলে transpiration বেছিকে হ'ব so xerophytic plants বিলাকে কি কৰে they have their stomata but that is very deeply seated একদম direct epidermis খনতে ওপৰতে নাথাকে it is not superficial তাহাতে deep seated থাকে very inside or cell eta বহু ভিতৰত থাকিব that is what is called as sunken stomata on the epidermis or it is deep inside যদি deep inside হয় তেতিয়াহলে তাহাক sunken stomata বুলি ক'ব sunken stomata is an adaptation to check the process of transpiration sunken stomata is an adaptation or is a characteristic found in xerophytic plants clear
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
মানে
ma'am.
সিহঁতৰ
Right?
ট্ৰান্সপিৰেশ্যন টো বহুত low মানে less
Less.
হৈছে
Obviously, কাৰণ পানী তাহাঁতে absorb কৰিবলৈ পানী নাই। যিখিনি absorb কৰিছে সেইখিনি যদি ট্ৰান্সপায়াৰ কৰি দিয়ে তেতিয়াহ'লেতো water balance টো problem হ'ব ন?
yes ma'am
Right? So that is the adaptation that they have. So question
Okay.
ahibo pisot. Sunken stomata is a characteristic of xerophytes.
okay ma'am
Okay? Any more questions?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Are you any questions? Okay then. Thank you for today. We'll meet on the next class. Please write down the questions, okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.